easiest way to get into the
My name is David Hults, and I'm with Alternative Life Guide. This is Josh Dippold of Integrating Presence, and we are here talking about things the public should know.
I don't know if anybody caught the last conversation, the last video we were doing. We wrapped it up with energy, and well, what exactly is energy?
We deal with energy every day. If you heat your home, cool your home, you run or go walk, you need energy. So,
how would you define energy, and why is that important?
But that is a really wide definition, right? So the sunlight is energy, and we know that electricity is energy, but we have geothermal energy, steam energy. If you look in your science training, energy can be defined as all kinds of things, but essentially at the crux, it is a source of power and ability to create other stuff from that source. For instance, the electricity powers your lights. The geothermal energy can create heat.
The idea of fire can burn and produce all kinds of other things.
Energy that we are talking about is a much more esoteric thing. It's about the planetary chi fields. It's about the inherent life force in the cosmos, in creation, that extends from the edge of the known universe all the way into the core of every planet and our own hearts.
I think that a lot of the energy concepts that we're referring to can be seen in energy healing and Reiki healing. Acupuncturists deal with this type of energy when they connect the different points in the body through the acupuncture needles, and it's called a wide variety of different names, but essentially you could refer to it as chi or just the force, is what Star Wars calls it. But energy, the word energy, is a really good sum total of all of this, I think.
Life force energy is what some folks call it too. There was a guy that with orgonite stuff, Wilhelm Reich, can look up his work. Argon energy, right? Mm-hmm. That's another word for it. And he was studied under Freud, but then he was, his whole story, there's plenty of information about him.
Wilhelm Reich, look him up.
Mm-hmm.
And Nikolai Tesla.
Yes, most people are familiar with that name by now, just because of the car, right?
At least because of the car.
But it's pretty, it's just obvious if you want to take it, somebody that's really sick and close to death, if you just look at them, it just doesn't seem like they have much, life left in them, so to speak, right?
That's a really good way to look at it.
But then I don't know if anybody's witnessed a birth, you just go in there, it's just kind of like a magical, it's so much life energy, life force in where that birth takes place. I remember that with my niece and nephew.
How it even imbues the whole room with energy, and everyone there is more upbeat and more full of life.
You get around somebody that's naturally has a lot of life force energy. They're just kind of like, people gravitate to them. They're like a magnetic personality. But if you have somebody that's had been through multiple traumas, sometimes it can be more challenging to be around certain people during certain times like that. So it's a really fascinating, mysterious type of thing, but then also something we deal with just about every day, and it's also it can be commonplace as well.
One way that you can observe the energy and how we are all energetic beings, you mentioned how the some people that are very exuberant and outgoing, we might even call them extroverts or something like that. They have a lot of energy to burn, right? And so we're attracted to them. They're always very outgoing, and they can raise the level of the room. They can raise other people's energy around them.
And that's how they get replenished themselves, is through, other people. And yes, well, the opposite, introverts, you need to go in, recharge your batteries in alone time, right? That's how they recharge.
And I'm an introvert, very much so. So when we are around a lot of people, we actually get drained of our energy unless we've learned to protect ourselves in different ways, or find a way to continually sustain ourselves, which requires a lot of introspection and inner learning.
For those of you who identify as introverts, I highly recommend finding a way to have alone time at least every day, just a small period of it, because it is the difference between wearing yourself thin or having some kind of a robust life, because you need that blank space to just be with yourself, and you'll fill it, don't worry. But I mean, even if you just take time to write in your journal, or take time to draw a piece of art, or for me, I like to sit with all my crystals and just kind of hang out there. But sometimes it's not even about doing anything. It's more of, I'm taking the time for myself because I need my energy.
Especially during this time too, when I was more introverted, I had to have that. Otherwise, it's hard for me to function
Right.
the way I wanted to, because it was just that was just a necessity. And it's self-care and self-nurturing and self-love during this time is really super important, even for extroverts, I feel.
Oh yeah.
And then another way too is I would say more, if you had to put a label, mesovert, which is a word I learned recently. So it's kind of like it's a cross between, or it's a balance between introverted and extroverted. And another way for that is to find people we resonate with, right?
Yes.
So where we don't, and that's another gauge too. So are you in a situation where your energy's are you feeling constricted and drained? Are we feeling expansive and energized
Right.
with the activities and folks that we're around? So that's a good gauge to know as well, right?
It really is, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's a lot of tools that we can use in the world today. People have been studying this for a long time, and there's a consciousness scale, and it looks like a rainbow, and it goes from like 100 down to 0, which is essentially death and enlightenment. But in there, they rank all of the levels of consciousness, and if you can find yourself in your current moment level of consciousness, then you can change. So if you find yourself in like a fear or a downtrodden, that's not the right word, but in one of the lower areas on the scale, then hey, I can go up, I can be happy, but there's stair steps in that. And if you look online for consciousness
I've seen
scale,
this, yes.
There's so much information out there. And what's really fun is nowadays all kinds of counseling and psychology is really coming in, studying this information and backing it up. The original people were all who came up with this stuff were psychologists and other doctors, but they couldn't get the masses, they couldn't get their information out to the masses because of the technology limitations back then. Well, nowadays, we have so many people who are encountering this information on their own terms, and really professionals in their industries are taking it in, and you're seeing people like Brené Brown translate the consciousness scale into her discussion about vulnerability, and how it's really important for all of us to learn how to be vulnerable with ourselves and conscious of our energetic state. Because it doesn't matter whether we believe in religion or woo-woo or nothing. These are more of a practical application concepts that we can embrace to be better functioning people.
The consciousness scale, to address that it's so great, and that just shows why you can never have too much mindfulness, because you have to be mindful of where you're at kind of in consciousness.
Right.
So even if you're all the way down to one of the lowest levels, you still have to have some kind of awareness, some kind of consciousness to know that. But you have to have a comparison point too, right? Usually, right?
Some reference.
Some other reference point and that's another good point. Even if you're at the highest expanded state of consciousness, you still have to be mindful that you're at that state, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's not a constant. That's the other thing.
That's what I was coming to next, because in this world, it's nothing is really permanent and nothing is really constant. So just realize no matter where you're at, there's a scripture thing that says this too will change, right?
Yeah, this too will pass.
Yeah, this too will pass. So it's like, that's if there's any constant in life, it's that things aren't constant.
Right. Which I think is
can be a very good thing too, because you would just be stagnated, frozen into the same level, and where would be there would be no growth potential or change. It'd just be like like mashed potatoes or something.
I've been on top and on bottom in our spectrum of like places to be in career, success, relationships, stuff like that. I think that the most important thing I've learned over time is that this is not a constant. And we can't expect ourselves to be at the same level all the time because it just doesn't work that way.
Set up for disappointment right there.
So we'll burn ourselves out in trying to remain up here. If we learn how to surf the waves of our emotions and surf the waves of our daily life, instead of trying to maintain this at all times, realize you go down and you come up. You can also harness the momentum. And so, for instance, if I know that I need to be on top right here, then I'm going to kind of take it easy in all of my efforts until I ride that momentum up into that high flying place that I need to be at for whatever functionality it is.
Peak experiences are great because they're just they make things worthwhile, right? But to be constantly chasing after and trying to recreate peak experiences can be a way to burn out too, right? And then also miss other peak experiences as well. And also that's great.
Hold on, peak experiences at different levels, because
yes,
but to like maybe the word peak isn't the we use the word peak to talk about the pinnacle,
yes,
right? And what you're talking about is having a perhaps lower consciousness experience with greater magnitude, greater importance. You know, a peak experience, but in this level. Because I think that one of the beautiful things about human beings is the spectrum of emotions that we work in. It really is a constant flow, and we can't expect to be happy and go lucky all the time.
You wouldn't want to be anyway, would you?
At the same time, we wouldn't want to be sad.
Exactly. We were talking earlier about this kind of air. We get a lot of flyover.
The airport's over there.
They like the term full spectrum human.
Full spectrum human.
Yes.
I'm so glad you said that.
Great?
It really is. It's such an appropriate term, because not only is there a full spectrum of light that we can understand, and it's all beneficial for us. Like we're just now in our science really coming to understand light as waveform and how important it is in the whole spectrum of light, not just the part that we see or the parts that tan our skin or that make the plants grow. Like all light has a purpose, and we don't understand half of it.
About right, I love that's a great idea. When we need to harness that to reach a certain state when life calls for that, and that would be the optimum place to be. At the same time, realizing that sometimes we have only a certain amount of involvement in doing that, right? But this, which I feel a really important part of that is intention, which we can come back to in a second.
Yeah.
Also, to having the ability and the development of will to be able to do something like that. At the same time, where is the balance point of surrender, where we can just let go and see what that might be, what we think might be optimal for us, very well could be, but it could also be something else that needs to happen kind of on its own that would far exceed our imagination and expectations that would just life kind of has in store for us naturally as well. So for me, it's about balancing those two things, right? So when we feel we just kind of get just kind of like a notion that, you know, well, this is probably what I need to aim for. And other times it's like, well, maybe we'd hand the reins over to life and see what life has in store as well.
Yeah. I do really resonate with the Christians say let go and let God, and I think that you can extrapolate that into it doesn't matter what you believe, if you
or God's will is another one.
God's will, right?
If you believe that everything is happening the way that it should, or that you can trust the universe, and I know this is really hard, but seriously, you can do it too. Letting go and releasing control is probably one of the most profound gifts that I've learned about dealing with this year in 2020, dealing with the employment concept and career track concept. I think many of us find ourselves in places that we don't necessarily like, whether it's physical, mental, career-wise, but try as we might, we struggle and strive and fight against the thing and try to find our right place. And for me, really realizing that that wasn't working was part of my journey to this point. And the releasing control actually allowed me, don't get me wrong, it was not easy or quick, but it allowed me to truly find myself, because all of a sudden I started like paying attention to myself inside. And I'm glad that you mentioned mindfulness, because I think that mindfulness is, um, a lot of people misunderstand it as if we're trying to convert you to Buddhism or something like that. When there's roots of it in Buddhism, there's roots of it in Asian theology and religions, there's roots of it in Christian theology and religions. But mindfulness is just about caring about the moment and experiencing what is a little bit more than you had been before. You know, being mindful of how your body works, why people do things. Taking a moment, breathe, is just the most simple. You don't even have to think about it. It's just the most simple act of mindfulness. It's like pay attention to your breath and just be. You know, I feel that mindfulness has had a really good upswing in recent years and popularity. I think that the concept is just like yoga. You know, everybody knows the word mindfulness now. Whether they practice it, who cares? I think the buzzword is important because we understand that it is a thing. And then you might be attracted one day to check it out. And by researching mindfulness a little bit, you might try meditation a little bit. And, you know, you going back to that surfing the wave, it doesn't have to be a long time. There are times as a introverted, empathic person, I realized that I might need some space, literally some days of time to get ready for a presentation, or because I have to go to a family gathering, or something that I know I'm going to need to be emotionally strong for.
And sometimes afterwards to integrate those experiences as well.
And afterwards, right? But at the same time, if I meditate, it can happen faster.
Yeah, it's right. It's an expedient. Expedient
Right.
means it really is. So the mindfulness thing, I'm glad you brought that up, because this month's conversation, I do a monthly, shameless plug here, a monthly conversation with Denny Mew in California online, and that's our next topic is going to be McMindfulness in the mindfulness industry. Well, that's kind of like a negative thing, or a kind of like maybe a more critical version of its popularity. But the thing is, like I totally 100% agree. That it's better to, let me say, any press is good press, right? So just to have it draw attention to it. To me, one of the definitions of mindfulness is knowing what's happening in the moment as it's happening. So yeah, it's just a basic bare awareness, right? You defined it very well. The surrender part and how to just let go and give up control. It's a very fascinating topic, because you know, it seems like we have some kind of agency, right? And some people seem to have more of a higher agency than other to affect their world and whatnot. But it seems like on an ultimate level, maybe control is kind of an illusion. Now, this is something that, not to be believed, you have to kind of look into it yourself, and it's many layers and whatnot. A great maybe universal type thing that I just love is it kind of goes beyond. It sets aside kind of judgments and judgmentalism, who's better, who's right, who's wrong, and focus on what's skillful and wise and wholesome. So I mean, those are kind of that takes a lot of fleshing out, but it's just like a lot of people can just get on the same page with that. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but as our awareness increases and become more mindful, these things become even more apparent, right? How if an action is skillful, if a speech is skillful, if thinking or certain thoughts and maybe initiated emotions are skillful or unskillful. Right. Same way with wise, are they wise or not? And then wholesome or not. And then the wholesome thing, it's not so much as I should do this, I should be more wholesome. Right. It's more like, this is for my benefit. Mm-hmm. So if we put this into practice, we realize that life is just it's hard to describe. It's just kind of smoother and whatnot. It's kind of like having. We know that certain mechanisms of coping are healthier than others, right? And we can see benefits from that. So, and then eventually, get to the point where possibly we just get more feedback of how being wholesome in the world is for our own benefit and everybody's benefit. So when other people benefit, we benefit from it as well. It's not so much as a goody two shoes type of thing. Some of the reasoning is escaping me now. Maybe it'll come back.
It's a non-judgment reasoning. Part of mindfulness that I've come to understand is a non-judgmental approach. So, like, yes, you talked about the skillful and wholesome and wise, but when you're observing these things, I think it's very important for us to realize, like, we don't have to judge.
Yes.
It's not better or worse to be, like, more skillful or less skillful is not better or worse.
Yes.
It is just a range of skill.
Yes.
A range of wisdom, a range of wholesomeness. And it actually, truthfully, doesn't matter whether it's the best or the worst. And I think that, especially in my life, as I've embraced releasing control, the first step was releasing judgment about things. And it's super hard to do this, because while we can all do this, I think the most difficult part is the emotional interaction with oneself, because we realize how much we do judge, how much our society is built to judge, and how much that actually hurts us all. Like, every one of us is damaged in one way or another because of the judgment, because we have to either judge ourselves as better or worse than someone else, or we are told that we are better or worse than something else. We're better or worse based upon the grades, based upon this. And I don't necessarily know what the framework of a non-judgment society looks like, but people are implementing it all over the place in schools and in community groups. My colleagues and I started a project this year called the North St. Louis Mindfulness Project, and we'll get to that in another conversation. But one of the first steps is to observe without judgment, and
that's another definition of mindfulness. Yep.
It is incredibly challenging, but once you get the hang of it, it actually becomes so much more satisfying, because you're no longer rating yourself in relation to other people. You're no longer, I've had to completely change my success factors and what I judge myself on, and trying to not judge myself, because by all standards in corporate America, I'm not up to snuff. But that's not my fault. I have a skill set that goes far and wider than just a computer jockey sitting at a desk, so maybe I just don't want their job. Either way, non-judgment has brought me to becoming more familiar with myself, and also being more gentle.
I like the word non-judgmentalism, but I don't think it's skillful to confuse judging with discernment. Okay, so
that
discernment, it's a huge difference. It says then some people will judge themselves for judging, right? So then it just spirals down like that. Matt Kahn is another teacher, favorite teacher of mine at the moment. His teaching on judgment is there's actually can be a silver lining there too. Mm-hmm. So what you said is all very important, and that's the standard, right? The thing that goes overlooked is what I just said, is a lot of times people will judge themselves for judging. But what I think that anybody that's even remotely concerned about not wanting to judge other people, they're not really judging other people or other things, because they have that awareness there, and they don't have it. Now, somebody that derives satisfaction and a superiority from judging, now I would call that being judgmental.
Yes.
Right?
They get something out of it.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's a great way to put it. So when they
get energy out of it, that's where we're going with that.
So but there is a silver lining when those judgments come up, and we say, well, why am I judging? I don't want to judge this. Well, sometimes that can just say, okay, well, I see and honor, your Buddha nature, your divinity, but maybe this isn't for me right now. Maybe this is saying something like this. Whatever the judgment comes up, maybe we take a look that maybe that's there for a reason. And this brings up the ego, because some people have a superior ego, but then there's also the inferior ego, like I'm not good enough. That's an ego too. That's often overlooked. And so there's a classic teaching that if I think I'm better than someone, that's conceit. If I think I'm less than someone, that's the conceit, and we can kind of both see that. The one that's a little bit more challenging to see is on a relative level, not an absolute level, is if I'm equal to this person, that's conceit. Now, the way I understand that is that I could never match David's unique brilliance, nor could he ever match my unique brilliance, right? Mm-hmm. So when I'm trying to get on an equal playing field with someone, now I see that there's all kinds of equality, like equality of compassion, like everybody deserves just equal amount of compassion, and things like this. But like overall, like when I say that I'm trying, or there can also be a competition. Like I can try to be in competition. Do I need to lower myself, or do I need to raise myself so I can get on equal footing with this? Which is impossible anyway on a relative level, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. So, but I wouldn't want to do that either, because it would almost be like, potentially, I would say this wouldn't happen, but it could be like a gray kind of hive mind mentality where everybody just kind of comes into a group think because they think they're equal on all levels. Mm-hmm. In a way, there are ways that we are, but in other ways, I wouldn't want to be, match equal, because that's the beauty of an individuality. But now, how do we balance that with like kind of group consciousness and unity consciousness as well? So that's another thing. So the consciousness can be kind of unified, although without having to lose our individuality and things like that, right?
So I think that
in uniqueness.
I think that what you're talking about is very practical application. Like it sounds very lofty in conversation, but it's much more of the practical application, nuts and bolts of this stuff. So like coming together as a group, in a non-judgmental way, we could agree that we're all independent and awesome human beings that will collaborate together on these things, right? And I think it's our own challenge is to be accepting and open and loving in that collaboration, right? But but then there's the next level where we come together as a group and agree that we are all becoming like a hive mind kind of concept. And this is where you get into the concept of a high functioning team. Okay. Because we kind of release our egos. She's totally cold. Yes. I'm going to take her inside.
Okay.
We kind of let go of our egos and allow for the groupthink to happen. But this is a choice, right? And we notice in groups that are not aligned, where everybody is not given their own sovereign individuality, that people kind of reject these concepts and buck the group,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But if we're all coming together in complete agreement about our own sovereign worth and self-worth, then we can definitely have that groupthink a little bit quicker.
The group projects, it just seems so challenging at this time, because so many people are dealing with so many issues. Do you have any examples to look for of cohesive groups that are really like kind of role models and to look for, I don't know, carrying out projects or just interaction or what? Because that's blanking on me now, just because it's so challenging right now.
That is actually a really good idea for another talk, because there are plenty of groups that are working on things like this that have demonstrated good ways to collaborate.
And that are not cults.
Right? And that are not cults, right? Because we definitely, so a note on the cults, if you find yourself in an oppressive situation, cult or not, you don't need to be in an oppressive situation. If people are telling you how to think and forcing you into certain mental constructs, that is not the truth of life. And you can find something better and more real for yourself.
Abusive situations. Do whatever you can to get out of those.
You need to go stay on a person's couch for a little while.
Get out of any abusive relationship that you're in, obviously.
Yeah. So. If we find our own self-worth, we can potentially change the situation. Potentially, when it involves others, and this is like a whole other wealth of conversation that other people are more specialized in. But I know that if you're in a relationship, like an individual relationship with like a marriage or something like that, that you both have self-worth, if one is oppressing the other, then it needs to be a conversation amongst the two. And if you can't agree on it, then leave, right? Then find a way out. But I feel it's very important to recognize the love that got you into that first, and don't give up on it. I mean, obviously, if you're in an abusive situation, get out.
Yes.
Because that's never going to change.
Yeah.
But if you can
or even if it is, you have to remove yourself before it can.
Before
right?
it can,
Yes,
right? But I do think that you can come together in this situation. This is actually the perfect segue into the last topic, but before you asked for a group that demonstrates good leadership and good ways to interact, there is a educational platform called Mind Valley.
Yes.
Mindvalley.com.
And I did that seminar you told me. So.
I'm glad.
Yep.
So it's their educational opportunities are vast and really awesome.
Okay.
All their teachers are great. But more importantly, if you study the company and if you read the books by the founder, Vishen Lakhiani, he talks about how he has built his team and how through personal development on his part, he got himself in the right spot and continues to get himself in the right spot. And then he's able to show up and be real for the rest of the group. But meanwhile, the rest of the group is getting themselves and doing their own personal work. So it's more of like finding the group that's committed to self-growth and committed to these ideals, right? And don't give up on it, you know? If you can, bring it into the group.
Resonance, if you resonate with something in common interests and similar values, I think those are all very important,
right,
too.
And don't settle. I think that's the other thing. Like if you have to be there, then don't settle for the group performing badly. Be the one that stands up. And
Yes.
it takes guts, and people might shoot you down.
Yep.
But more likely than not, if you stand up and try to set it right, people will follow you.
Yeah,
because
well,
they're looking for leadership.
you'll get respect too, and then you'll thank yourself down the road as well, right?
Right.
Even if it's uncomfortable at the moment. Going back to the relationship type things, yes, the honor, respect, the validation, and the value. Those are all, yeah, and then the worthiness. You know, so many people don't feel they're worthy of whatever too, and also abundance is happens with allowing. It's kind of the flavor of allowing.
Happens with allowing. The big conversation that we're segueing into is that we as people, as groups, as communities, as the civilization on this planet have the opportunity to stop fighting about all of this. We've been, I think that the construct, the framework that we've been operating in for thousands of years now has been conquer and overcome. And that's just no longer true anymore. I feel that many people have been talking about this, whether it's in the sustainability, environment, stuff like that, or politics. There have been these thoughts and concepts for generations, if not hundreds, thousands of years. But we really are coming into a time on the planet
that you, me, all of us, the whole planet, nations, industries, all of us can stop fighting, because the competition is what's killing us. I feel that collaboration is truly the way forward, and finding out, we've talked about our self-worth and our sovereignness and stuff like that, but we have to do that as individuals so that we can be there for our group, and then our group can be there for the larger group around the world. Because right now we have everything. The planet is ripe and abundant with
people and power and, in any way that you translate those words, resources. There is a finite amount of oil on the planet, so let's stop using it. That kind of thought process is a really good thing, because we can then discern what's the best thing to use. But we need to stop fighting about whether oil is the best thing to use on the planet, because it's just not. If you look at all the science and all the information out there, there's so many reasons to move away from that particular thing.
Seems pretty obvious to us, but I guess not. Well, it's just such an entrenched infrastructure there as well. The common thing, the thread that runs through all of life here, pretty much in the States anyway, is moving from competition to cooperation, right? Our culture promotes or has promoted competition,
Yeah.
right? Especially for kind of the masculine. That's a thing we go in sports, and then also the business world. That's a kind of our challenge, and some of the more feminine, their challenge maybe might be relationships and family and things like that.
And it's, you mentioned sports and
Yes.
business. So competition is not a bad thing. Like healthy competition,
Right.
being sportsmanlike. Like
Yes.
I love playing sports.
Mhm.
I am not on a sports team. I do not watch sports. But if you want to go play a game of baseball,
Yeah.
I will dig out my glove and my bat and
Sure.
let's go play. Because I enjoy playing games with other people for fun and entertainment. But I don't care about the outcome.
Yes, beautiful, and you can learn cooperation doing
Right.
that too, right?
It's very important.
Yes, yes. So
Team
there's
sports
I
are
don't want
like
to just
that.
shoot down all of that all at once in generalization. The competition is like, well, what is the end result of this competition? Because there's, not to throw in these old sayings and stuff, but I'll do it anyway. It's this like. Winning gives way to hostility, and losers lie down in pain. The wise have set aside winning and losing.
The fighting thing, another old, I guess, axiom or saying is that, hatred is never overcome by hatred. Only by love can hatred be addressed. It's an ancient truth.
Right. You can't fight fire with fire. It just makes more fire. And it's, I think the other thing is we have these words in our civilization, such as fight fire with fire. It's very caustic just in our language about how we approach things. Because why does it have to be a struggle? Why does it have to be a fight? What if the world was such that we all got everything that we needed and wanted as we needed and wanted it, and really all we had to do was wake up, be positive, and interact.
We not have to sign our life away for a job just to have our basic needs met, a job that we don't want to do.
And no, we're not talking about socialism. Just to be clear. There's a lot of other new stuff that Josh and I will talk about in the coming
Yes,
months.
definitely not. That's I don't feel that socialism, communism, it really is the answer. Nor is gangster capitalism either. So
I think that all of those philosophical words about economic policies and things like that, I think all of those can be revisited, and there are new ways of thought.
There are, but it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. That the same level of the problem can be solved with the same level of consciousness that created it. It's all about the inner work and doing the inner work. So when we do go in and interact, then we can be at our the best level. Because how can I be of service to the highest degree if I'm not, if the level of consciousness and development is there to begin with, right?
Yep.
But that's not to say you can't do anything until that starts either. It's just they constantly reinforce themselves in health.
Right. And I think that all of this really comes back down to being mindful about ourselves and our personal space, because that's where it starts. I've realized, I've spent years thinking about all these things, and that brings me to the conversation that we're having today, right? But I've taken action for myself, and I've really done years of inner work and countless master classes and introspections and journal writings. And I'm not much
Shadow
for,
work too.
Yeah, shadow work,
Mhm.
very much. We're going to confront all of these things as individuals, and it's not easy. It's not necessarily fun. But on the other side, when we're able to realize, oh my gosh, I've changed my life forever in a good way, just by this simple personal interactivity, or maybe not simple, but personal interactivity.
Well, simple but not easy, right?
Yeah, simple but not easy.
And it's just like, because the pain that we're trying to run away from, hide from, cover up, distract ourselves from, eventually it's going to catch up with us anyway, right?
Right, you can't hide from
You can't, not forever anyway, but so when we can be in a decent space or have the space held for us to actually address that and work on that and heal that, but then also realize if it gets too intense that there are healthy ways to cope with, so we don't have to stare down the barrel of a gun,
like counseling.
Yes.
Counseling's great.
Counseling, there's so many different mechanisms and coping things too as well. So
Sure.
Yep.
Well, we covered
Yes.
a great amount today.
Cool.
And we'll sign off there.
All right, David.
I hope you all